Greetings and welcome to another installment from the Patchwork Productionz Learn to Crochet for Beginners series. In this video, you will learn about working in the round. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Stitch, and Patchwork Productionz is all about learning and doing crochet. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss another installment. Without further ado, let's get started. So in this video, you're going to need some medium worsted weight yarn, and I'm also going to be using a USJ 10 or 5.75mm hook. And today we're going to be learning about working in the round, a more complete tutorial on working in the round. In my granny square tutorial, we got to work in the round for the first time in this tutorial series, and of course you had to learn a little bit of it to be able to make the granny square, but today we are going to be doing more with working in the round. So I'll first say that there are a few different ways that you may start working in the round, and so I'll show you them. Firstly, the one that we learned with the granny square is called a chain loop. And so basically you make a chain. Let's say we make a chain of 4. That's what we did for the granny square. And then you join into the first chain with a slip stitch. Now, not the first chain from the hook, but the first chain you made. And so you get this chain ring, and then you work into the center of your chain ring and do the rest of your loops, typically how it's done. Another way of doing this, which we have not covered, it's called the magic ring, or magic circle, or finger loop. It goes by a few different names. I first learned it as magic circle. But basically, you make a loop around your fingers. 3 times is a pretty good number of times. And then what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the middle of this little loop that you've made, and you're going to make a slip stitch. Now, you have to make sure you hold all of these loops for now because they will slip and slide. So you just pull it through, draw a loop, and then draw another one, and just make a little holder, a little placeholder. So now you can begin working however many stitches you need to into your magic circle here. So if you look, I have made this little slip stitch here, and now there are these 2 loops, and I can pull this string to tighten the loop, but we're not going to do that yet. So we're going to I'm going to quickly make 6 stitches in here. So now that I have my 6 single crochets here, I can now just pull this right here, and it forms it into a ring, basically. And then you just have this extra tail here that you might otherwise have, and my first stitch decided to come loose, but basically this is how you do the magic circle. So I'm going to show you again so that you can see. So you just take, say, 2 fingers, wrap it so that you have three loops on the finger. Of course, one of them is going to be your working yarn that you're going to work with. So now that you have this loop here, you're going to put your hook through the middle of that, and you're going to work a slip stitch. So you draw a loop and then draw straight through that loop, and just a little holder so that it kind of holds itself together. And now you can work all the stitches you need into this loop here and pull on your string when necessary. Now, when I first learned about the magic circle, it took me forever to figure out what it meant and how to do it, but it really is simple. You just make your loops, hold it together with a slip stitch, and then you can work as many stitches as you need to into this loop, and when you're done, you pull on this tail end here, and it will just pull everything together nicely. Now, the way I learned how to do the way I learned how to start working in the round was actually sort of a mix between the chain ring and the magic circle. Basically, you typically chain 2 is how I've seen it, and then into that second chain you're gonna work as many stitches as necessary. So let's say I'm doing 6. 1, 2, 3, and I'm working all of these into the same stitch. 4, 5, 6. So this is the way I first learned how to do it, and I'll do it again for you so that you can see. Basically, you chain 2, and then into that first chain you just work as many stitches as necessary. Again, I'll just do 6, and it's all being worked into that one chain. Four, oops, 5, 6. And so this is the last way that I'm aware of how to start working in the round. So there are 3 different ways. You have the chain ring, the magic circle, and you have this, which I don't know what name it goes by, but that's just the one I learned. I especially learned this when I got into making amigurumi, which is basically crocheted stuffed animals, and that was the method most often used to begin. Now, when working in the round, the stitches that you work into the round to, make the project are generally worked the same way as when you're working in the row. So there's nothing extra special to mention there. I believe a few of the stitches are a little hard, but as far as elementary stitches, they're all worked into the round the same that they're worked into the row. Now, where the difference comes with the round, aside from its shape, is how we work our project to grow in size. So there are 2 ways that the round is typically worked. You have the slip stitch join method, and then you have the spiral method. I actually first learned the spiral method, but I will show you the slip stitch join method first, and I'll do it with the magic circle. So just to show you in practice how this would work. So we're going to make a little slip stitch here to hold this together, and make sure that's nice and tight, because that will never need to be worked into. It's just to hold our yarn. Now I'm going to do this in double crochets because I feel like it will make it easier to see. So I'm going to chain 2 as my double crochet, and I'm going to work 12, well, I'll work 16 double crochets into this. And let's see here, let's have our double crochet count, our chain 2 count as a double crochet. So give me one moment. Okay, so I have 16 double crochets here, and that is including my turning chain. And so what's going to happen here is that this is going to resemble a lot, resemble very closely how we work in the row, because our turning chain is counting as a double crochet, we're going to, instead of making a turning chain now, we would join with a slip stitch to that chain. So now this is joined, and we can actually pull our magic circle tail to close that loop there. Just like that. So now it's closed up in the center. It's never going to be perfectly closed in the center, but you can get it pretty good with the magic circle. And so now that we've joined with a slip stitch, just like with the row where we do a turning chain, we would now chain again. So I'm working with 2 chains for the double crochet. And so now I can begin the second row or round, the second round of my circle here that I'm making. So this is the slip stitch join method. So every round we're going to join with a slip stitch to our turning chain, to our, or I should say our chain 2, and then we're going to chain 2 again and continue. So now I will make another double crochet. This is going to begin round 2, and that turning chain is going to count as a double crochet again. Now here's where things get different for working in the round. I explained this in my granny square tutorial, but I'll say it again. The working in the round is kind of just, making a circle, spiral that has to grow in size. Because if it doesn't grow in size, it will simply go down. And so to grow in size, we have to increase. And we also need to increase by a certain amount every round. Typically, it's basic math that we do. Basically, for the first round, we have a starting number of stitches. For the second round, we do an increase in every single stitch. This will double the amount of stitches we have worked in the end. So here I started with 16, that was for round 1. In my second round, I should have 32 because I would have put 2 double crochets in every stitch that I've worked. Now, this might not always be the case. There are other ways of increasing. It may not necessarily be strictly 2 double crochets in every stitch, but this is generally how it's worked. And so if I were not to do that, I'd end up with a little tube. I'll show you that later. But so let me go ahead in all the stitches around, and I'm going to do an increase into every stitch. So the stitch that I worked a double crochet into, I'm going to work another double crochet into it, because this is just a single double crochet increase, and I'm going to keep doing that around. So just give me one moment to do that. So now I finished round 2, and I have 32 stitches, and it's always good to count when you're done, because you can sometimes, and it happens to me a lot, you can be crocheting and you just miss one of those increases in one of the stitches. So let's count this to be sure. And again, our chain is acting as a stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So we have 32 stitches here, and that's because I did an increase in every single one of the stitches around. Now I will say our chain right now is acting as a double crochet. It doesn't have to. This chain can just be a chain to move from round to round, and we could have actually made 32 double crochets instead of 31 double crochets and 1 chain 2. I'm just doing it that way just because I decided to. But it doesn't have to be, and maybe your project, whichever project you might use, might direct you to do something different. Now, as you can see though, our project has gotten larger because we've added more stitches, and of course the height of the double crochet is going to be added every time. So now, what would happen if we did not add the right amount of stitches? See, for round 3, what you would normally have to do, and this is the consecutive pattern, basically, first round, your base number of stitches. In this case, 16. A lot of times I work with 6 or 12, but you can do 16. The second round is going to be double of that, so that would be 32, because you did an increase in every single one of the stitches. For the next round, you would increase only in every other stitch, but the other remaining stitches would just be the regular stitch, so in this case double crochet. So for this I would do a double crochet and then a double crochet increase in the next stitch, and then the next stitch a double crochet, then double crochet increase, and I do that all the way around. Someone feel free to do the math for that. I don't want to right now, but you wouldn't have double of 32. It would be, I guess, 1.5 32s or something. But you would have a larger number of stitches, but it wouldn't be by the same amount. The next round after that, you would do it double crochet, double crochet, double crochet increase. And then you would do that repeating pattern. And then the next round, you do double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet increase. And so that's how the pattern goes. Every single round, you add another double crochet that you would do before the increase, and that allows it to grow in size. Let's see what happens if we break that pattern. First, I'm going to increase in every stitch around without doing that extra double crochet that I'm supposed to do. So instead of double crocheting in every other, I'm going to show you what happens if, oops, I have to do a chain 2. I'm going to show you what happens when you do the increase in all the stitches again. So in the end, we're going to have 64 stitches because we're doing this increase in every stitch, even though we shouldn't be. So give me a brief moment. So I didn't even finish the whole thing, because not only was that going to take a long time, but as you can see here, the effects are already making themselves known. So my project here is getting all warped. It's not flat anymore, because when you're working in the round, unless you're trying to get an effect like this, you really just want it to grow in size until the right point. So the reason this happened is because there are more stitches in any one point of the project than there is space to accommodate it. And so it can't go out like with the granny square. And if I have one to show here, you can see here with the granny square that this increase here kind of looks more like a triangle and less just like 3 pillars together. That's in part because it was worked into a chain 1, and so it doesn't have much space at the bottom to stretch. But the other reason is that at the top there's also a chain 1, and so it has more space to be able to push out. Now if these were all double crochets, but at the bottom are chain ones, that would look just a tad different. So that's the general concept that's happening here, which is the reason there is a certain way for increasing stitches, because if you put too many stitches in any one point of the project, there's going to be too many. So as you can see here, I can kind of move where this ripple is, because if I make this have the right number of stitches, that wave is going to get moved down because there are just too many stitches, so I can't make it all perfect. At some point, that's it. I can't move it anywhere else, so I'd have to seriously stretch the project in order to make that look any more flat by itself, because it just needs enough space to accommodate all those stitches. Now if I were to put too few stitches, so instead of adding too many, if I were to put too few, you would get the same effect, because at any one point of the project, there's going to be a set of stitches that just don't have enough space to be accommodated, and so it's going to warp and ripple. This principle right here was a struggle for me when I first started. The first hat I ever tried to make took me like 10 times to make, probably, because I was doing it wrong, and so I wasn't increasing the right amount of times as I went through my rounds. And so I kept getting these little rippled flower looks, which it does make a great flower if you're trying to make a flower, but I was trying to make a hat. So it wouldn't grow inside, it would just increasingly get more and more rippled. This has a nice small ripple. Mine had like a whole wave of them going around, and it was because I was not increasing properly. So that's why there's kind of a measure for that. So if you ever find you're making a project, working in the round, and you're doing it by yourself, like you're trying to make up your own pattern, and you're trying to get a flat round and it's crinkling somewhere, it's because your ratio to stitches and space is off, and so you have to do some stitch adjusting. I've run into that with making several hat patterns by myself. I realized, ooh, I had the wrong count of stitches in different places, and so it messed up the pattern. So anywho's, that's what happens if you have too many or too few stitches, and that's why we have a nice way of knowing how many increases to make per round by that nice pattern that we have. Now, what would happen if we didn't increase at all? I don't know how long it'll take to do this, but we'll see in a second. I will work with double crochets. Okay, give me one moment. So this is the end of this round I did, where I just did double crochets, and I only did one in each stitch, so I matched the amount of stitches I had before. So there's 32 in this round, there's 32 in this round. And I only did one round, but perhaps you can start to notice the slight bend that this has. Kind of looks more like a very, very shallow bowl, or maybe a plate. And I can force it to be flat with that. But if I were to continue making even one more round with just double crochets, but two would be the most prominent, what's starting to happen is I'm matching the number of stitches every single time, and so it's simply going to, if I kind of force this into the shape it'll end up, it's going to make a tube that just goes all the way as long as you make it. So this is what you want to do when you've finished making this to the right size if you were going to make a hat, because you would grow it to the size, general size of the head, and then you would just make as many stitches as were in the previous rounds, which if it was 32, and this is a pretty tiny head if it was 32, but you would do 32 every single round, and it would go down as long as you would need it. Then you could curl it up, make a nice little cuff or something. But the point is that when working in the round, you're either increasing proportionally so that you have a flat round worked object, or you're just doing the same number of stitches so that you work your project down. So that's the general principle with working in the round. Now again, this method is the slip stitch join method, so we're chaining every single round to move on to the next round. Now I will undo all of this and I will show you the way that I had learned first, which is another way of doing it, but you know, different projects or different cases might have you do a different one. This one is the spiral method, where basically instead of chaining to move on to the next round, you simply keep crocheting. That's literally it. And so the way we do this, and I'm going to use the method that I had learned to start working in the round as well, because the spiral method is generally used in amigurumi as well. Not always, but generally. So I'm going to chain 2. We're going to work 6 single crochets. We're going to work with the single crochet for this one. 6 single crochets into this one chain. And now, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What we're going to do is we're now going to work straight into the first stitch that we did. So technically this is the end of round 1. 6 chains or stitches. And so now we're going to work into the next one and do round 2, which is an increase into every stitch. So that means by the end of this, we should have 12 stitches. So now if we count these, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so we have 12 stitches. This is the end of round 2. And so now if I were to go on to round 3, just like with the slip stitch join method, we have the same pattern of first it's the base number of stitches, then we do an increase in every stitch to double that, and then we do an increase in every other stitch. So for this one, I've done this enough that I know a few of the numbers. For starting with 6, it would be 6, then 12, then 18, then 24, then 30, and etc. and so on and so on. So for this one, I would do single crochet, then I would do a single crochet, a single crochet, oh my, a single crochet increase, and then I would do a single crochet, and then I would do a single crochet increase. And it's pretty easy because I know my base number and how this works. I would do that same pattern 6 times. So I would do single crochet and single crochet increase 6 times. The next round I would do a single crochet, then a single crochet, then a single crochet increase, and I would do that 6 times. So that's the general concept for how this works. And so that's working in the spiral, because as you can see, we just keep working around and around and around and around. We don't stop and do a chain to move on to the next round. And it makes a spiral pattern. You can see here, it looks like this. If it were bigger, it'd be a little bit more noticeable, but you can still sort of see it here, how it's this spiral pattern. Now, in both methods, it's a good idea to keep track of your rounds. In the spiral method, it's especially important because unless you know exactly how many stitches you'll have at the end of the round, which thankfully you can do some quick math, but it'd be really important to keep track because I have forgotten where I am in a spiral round because I'm like, oh great, I don't know how many stitches I have left to do. Now, a lot of times I can count which stitches are where and how many increases I've done, but it might be harder for a beginner to do that, and it's definitely a pain even if you can do it. So what I like to do to keep track of my rounds is just take a contrasting piece of yarn. So let me just snip off here some random yarn that I have. Something like this. It's a noticeably different color. And basically, I'm just going to insert it here, even though this is nowhere where it should be inserted. But basically, you just insert the yarn as such, and every round you do, you just pull that end through, and the next round you'd pull it back through, and the next round you'd pull it back through. So you'll have this like recurring bump pattern, and then it makes it easy to count because all you have to do is every bump is going to be 2 rounds. So if you have 3 bumps and your end is sticking out, you know you have 7 rounds that are complete. So this is an easy way of doing it. Another way people keep track of their rounds is using a pin. They'll just move the pin up every round. There are little devices. I have one. I'll probably show it in a later video. They have little things you can keep on your finger with buttons to keep track of the rounds. When you finish one, you just push that button, so when you come back to your project, you just look at the device and you know how many rounds you did, which round you're on, what you're supposed to be doing. They also have round markers, little plastic, they're almost like hooks that you can just put into the project as you move along. There's various ways to keep track of your rounds. So it's pretty nice to do that with any of the rounds, but especially important with the spiral round because it's fairly easy to lose track of where you are should you have to stop in the middle of your work for something. Because like right now, I have no idea how many of these I did for the next round. So just as an example, in the time I've been talking here, I've lost track, and I could brute force it and count, okay, this is an increase, this is a single, this is an increase, and try to go back and do it, or I can pull it all out, or it just gets messy. So pretty important. Keep track of your rounds. It'll save you much time and energy. Now, the same principles with the slip stitch join method for working in the round, same for here. If I were to put too many stitches in this round, for any of the rounds, frankly, it would begin to warp and deform because there are more stitches in any one place on the round that it can accommodate. It doesn't have enough place to stretch, and so it will simply just choose to go up or down, and you'll get these little waves going through. So if you want to make sure you keep your pattern flat, you've got to have a proportional amount of stitches. If you do too few, you'll get the same result because in any one place there will be more stitches than another place, more than can be accommodated, and so it'll warp. Also, if I were to continue crocheting the same number of stitches, like if I were to right now, however many stitches are on here, just keep single crocheting that many times without ever increasing or decreasing, I will simply obtain a tube because it will start to work its way down as it can't go out, but you're still adding stitches. So these are the general things to be aware of with working in the round. And again, 3 different ways to begin the round. You have the chain ring, which we did with the granny square. You have the magic circle, which is looping around your fingers and working into that. And then you have this method, which again, I do not know its name, but basically you just chain 2 and you work into that first chain the amount of stitches you need to start. And this is the method I learned when I did the spiral round. I'm pretty sure you can do either the slip stitch join or the spiral round for any of the methods for starting the round, but this is just what I've done. So here's a little crash course for you on working in the round. The round, just like with the row, there are different shaping things that you can do to get different results. So just like with the row, you could add and increase and decrease different places to get triangles and whatnot. You can do the same thing in the round. So those are some great things for you to experiment with. And for now, that will be all for this tutorial. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to learn more about crochet, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and also share this video with your friends and family or on social media. And feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or suggestions or any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, catch you later.